I didn't set out to build a business out of my diary. I wanted to say that right at the top before I say anything else, because I think if you've been listening to me for a little while, you might assume there must have been some plan, some 5-year vision board, some version of me at 20-something who said, someday I will read my dreams out loud to strangers on the internet and they will pay me for the privilege of feeling less alone. There wasn't a plan like that. There wasn't a plan at all, really. There was just a woman sitting on her bed, usually too early in the morning or too late at night, writing things down because if she didn't, she thought she might come apart at the seams a little bit. That's it. That's the whole origin story of Metta Momentum, if I'm being honest with you. Not a business plan, just a survival habit, a free flow journaling that happened to have a pretty good vocabulary. So, Season 5 of Softening into Momentum. This season is different than the others, and I want to tell you how and why before we get into episode 2, which, fair warning, involves a school bus, a strange woman with beautiful curls, and me ending up in Chicago when I was currently living in New Orleans. That's coming, I promise. But first, this. The behind the curtain one. The one where I tell you what it actually feels like to do this work in this body with this specific history. Here's the truth. These 8 essays that you're about to hear this season already existed. I didn't write them for you. I wrote them for the 2 a.m. version of me who needed to get something out of her body and onto a page before it calcified into something way worse. I wrote them the way you'd wring out a wet towel. Not in the least bit gracefully, but definitely necessary. Because the alternative was carrying around all that water, all that burden, forever. And so now, I'm taking those pages, some of them a couple years old, and I'm reading them to you, out loud, with my actual voice, which shakes sometimes if you listen closely. And I'm going to sit with you afterward and talk about what they were actually teaching me underneath all that story. Because I really don't think I understood half of what I was writing in the moment I was writing it. I think I only understand it now, looking back. That's usually how it goes. I want to be honest about something, because honest is the whole point of this podcast, and it would be strange to abandon that now in the one episode about how the sausage gets made, right? As they say. I think they say that. I don't know. I don't eat meat very often. Anyways, there is this real tension in turning your healing into your livelihood. I feel that. I feel it right now, saying this into a microphone. Some part of me worries sometimes. Is this exploiting my emotions? Am I performing my pain for profit? Am I precious little Miki, monetizing my diary? I've sat with that discomfort for a long time. And here is where I am landing, at least for today. In Buddhist teaching, there is this idea called right livelihood. which you've probably heard me say before if you've been listening to this podcast. It's one of the limbs of the Eightfold Path. The idea that how we earn our bread matters. Not just that we earn it, but that the earning itself doesn't deepen harm in the world. That it can instead deepen awakening for others, and this part gets forgotten a lot, for ourselves too. So I ask myself, is this right livelihood? Reading my dreams, my fears, my drunk phone grief out loud and asking you to sit with it. And yes, inviting you, if it resonates, into deeper work with me in the Sangha, into the 8-week journey back to yourself. I think the answer is yes. Not because I've resolved all of my tension. I definitely haven't. I don't think you're supposed to fully resolve tensions like this. I think you're supposed to keep asking the question. But I think the answer is yes, because these stories were never really mine to hoard. They were always dharma talks. I just didn't know it while I was writing them. On my bed, on the couch, half out of my mind with fear or grief or 5 a.m. adrenaline and lots of coffee, or all of them at once, which, if you know, you know. Let me tell you a little bit about how this actually works, the mechanics of it. Because I think people might assume that there's some sleek machine behind the scenes, and honestly, it's much more like a devoted, slightly chaotic little workshop in my little life. An essay starts on Substack, usually. I start on Substack because I really enjoy the format, the fonts, and the easy way that it can transfer to all my other platforms, Medium, Patreon, LinkedIn. It's raw when it goes up, barely edited, sometimes typed with my shaking hands at 5 a.m. after a dream that wouldn't let me get back to sleep. Then, several months later, sometimes a year later, I go back and I read it again with different eyes. And I ask, what was I actually being taught here? Not what did I say, what did I mean, but what was underneath it? And that now becomes a podcast episode, like the ones in this season. Sometimes it's become an extended or paid-only Patreon post with more of the tender, unfinished thinking left in. Sometimes, this season actually, it becomes a piece of the permission to be journey. Because I've realized that people don't just want to hear my stories, they want a way to ask the same questions within the framing of their own lives. We relate so that we can relate, so that we can heal. And I know some of you are already wondering, if you already read the essay when it first went up on Medium or LinkedIn or wherever you found me, why would you listen to the podcast version too? Here's my answer. It's the most honest one I got. Reading and hearing are different doors into the same room. There's something that happens in the body when a story is spoken out loud, when you can hear the place where my voice catches or slows down or goes quiet. My whole life, before I was a coach, before I was a published author, I was a singer, a performer, opera, musical theater. I learned a long time ago how to deliver a story with my whole body and breath. Way before I ever called any of this coaching or content or healing work. So when I read these essays to you, I'm not performing them the way an actor performs a script. I'm doing the thing I've always done. The thing that's older than my sobriety even, older than Metta Momentum. I'm giving a story, my whole voice, and trusting that something in the giving is the medicine, not just the words themselves. I also want to just say it plainly without dressing it up or making it pretty. This season is meant to be a door into permission to be. My 8-week transformation journey into the Softening into Momentum cohort for those of you who want to do this work alongside real, live people, including myself. I'm not going to pretend that's not part of why this season exists. That is why it does. I think naming that is much more honest than hiding it behind a vague, oh, I'm just sharing my journey energy. This is my journey, and it's also my right livelihood. And both of those things get to be true in the same body, on the same bed, on the same Tuesday. Before I let you go into the season proper, I want to say something else. The values, the core values are going to keep showing up. Essay after essay, whether I point to them explicitly or not. I didn't invent these after the fact just to make the season sound cohesive. I went back through years of writing to choose these stories. Some of them are unpublished. And these values were just already there, waiting, like they'd been the pattern the entire time. And now I am only now just standing back far enough to see the shape of it. Self-trust, loving kindness, recovery, curiosity, impermanence, courage, identity, spiritual awakening, and maybe my favorite, the one I probably need the most reminders of, gentle momentum over force. 9 threads, 8 stories. One woman sitting on her bed, trying to write her way home to herself. One dream, one fire, one drunk text at a time. So, here is what season 5 of Softening into Momentum actually is, in the plainest words I got for you. 8 stories that found me before I knew what to do with them. I'm going to read them to you exactly as I wrote them. Dreams, fires, fears, phones, and yes, there is an actual alien. All of it. And then we'll sit together with what they were actually teaching. And not because I have it all figured out, I promise you, I don't. But because I think you're going to recognize yourself somewhere in these pages, in these stories, and that recognition, that quiet, uncomfortable reliving, oh, yeah, that, yep, me too. That's the whole practice. That's the only thing I've ever actually been trying to offer you. If any part of what I just said stirred something inside of you, the tension, the honesty, the not quite resolved question of what it means to build a life out of your own healing, That's exactly what the Metta Momentum Sangha is for. It's free. It's on school. It's full of people asking these same unglamorous questions right alongside you. And when you're ready to go further, permission to be is there. Walking through this work, step by step, and the softening into momentum cohort is there too. For those of you who want to do this with a smaller circle of people, live, alongside me. Thank you for being here for the first breath of this season. A special bonus intro episode. Tomorrow, let's go find that bus. The Softening into Momentum podcast is lovingly curated, created, written, edited, and produced by me, Miki Byrne, with accompanying sound bath frequencies by my good friend, Static. If you would like to dive further into his incredible musical work, please go to YouTube at Static is Noise. Permission to Be is an 8-week mindful and self-trust journey back to yourself, rooted in compassion, nervous system awareness, Buddhist philosophy, and lived experience. You don't need to fix yourself. You need a gentler way home. Learn more in the show notes. Thank you so much for softening into this moment with me. Until we meet again, namaste.